Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Ivan. After many years of marriage and being together, I found men's lubricant in my wife's bag. She wasn't expecting what I did next. That evening wasn't different from other evenings, except my phone charger decided to give up on life right when I needed it most. The charging connector had been acting up for weeks, but that night, it finally stopped working completely. I'd already ordered a replacement on Amazon, but it wasn't arriving until the next day, and my phone was sitting at 12% battery. My wife has been coming home later and later over the last few months. Her explanations always revolved around being busy at work. I never questioned it because I trusted her completely. That's just the kind of person I was back then. The kind of husband who believed his wife when she said she was working late, who didn't think twice about the gradual changes in her behavior, who assumed the best rather than considering darker possibilities. I remember the first time she came home unusually late. It was about 3 months before this all happened. She walked in around 9:30, apologizing profusely and explaining about a last-minute client meeting that had run over. I heated up her dinner, asked about her day, and thought nothing more of it. That was my first mistake, though I didn't know it at the time. The late nights became more frequent after that. First, once a week, then twice, then it seemed like she was staying late at the office more often than she was coming home on time. Each time, she had a reasonable explanation. Project deadlines, difficult clients, and team meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. I never once questioned whether these explanations were true. During this period, I also noticed other subtle changes that I dismissed at the time. She became more protective of her phone, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. She started showering immediately when she got home, which she claimed was because she felt grimy after long days at the office. She seemed distracted during our conversations, often checking her phone while I was talking to her. Our physical intimacy also decreased significantly during those months. When I brought it up, she blamed stress from work and promised things would get better once her current projects were finished. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. The alternative was too painful to consider. That evening, she walked through the front door quite late, which had become routine. She said a simple hello, barely making eye contact as she headed straight for our bedroom. I was sitting on the couch when I heard the bathroom door close and the shower start running almost immediately. This has become her pattern lately. Come home, minimal interaction, straight to the shower. At the time, I assumed it was just her way of unwinding after long work days. The water would run for 20 or 30 minutes, which seemed excessive but not suspicious. Now I understand she was washing away evidence of activities I couldn't have imagined. With my phone about to die and needing her charger, I decided to check her bag. We had always been comfortable using each other's things. Her phone charger was the same model as mine, and I figured I could borrow it for the evening. I walked over to her bag, unzipped it, and began searching through the contents. Her usual work items were there, and then my hand touched something unexpected. A bottle of men's lubricant. Right beside it was a morning after pill. I held it up for a moment, trying to make sense of this and why she had it. The bottle was about half empty, which suggested recent and regular use. The morning after pill package hasn't been opened. These weren't items someone just happened to have lying around. I stood there in our bedroom, holding these items, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. My mind raced through possible explanations, but none of them made sense in the context of a faithful marriage. I decided to leave everything in the bag and backed away. I went back to the living room and allowed my mind to wander. The implications of what I'd found were staggering. My wife wasn't just working late, she was seeing someone else. Someone who needed men's lubricant. Someone she was intimate enough with to require morning after pills. The betrayal felt like a physical blow to my chest. I tried to think of innocent explanations. Were they left over from some office prank or health education seminar? But even as I grasped for these alternative explanations, I knew they were desperate fantasies. The evidence was clear, and I needed to face the reality of what it meant. When my wife joined me later, I asked her about her day. As she talked, it was hard to believe anything she was saying. She mentioned meetings and deadlines, but her responses felt rehearsed and vague. When I asked follow-up questions, she seemed uncomfortable and quickly changed the subject. She told me about a presentation she'd been working on for a difficult client, but when I asked for details about the client's industry or the nature of the project, her answers became increasingly generic. She mentioned staying late to collaborate with a colleague on strategy, but couldn't provide specific details about what they discussed or decided. I found myself studying her face as she spoke, looking for tells or signs of deception. Her eyes seemed to avoid mine more than usual. She fidgeted with her phone constantly, checking it even while we were talking. Every few minutes, it would buzz with a notification, and she would glance at it with an expression I couldn't quite read. We spent the evening together, but I wasn't really paying attention to anything. My mind kept returning to what I discovered. The bottle of lubricant haunted my thoughts. Who was she using it with? How long has this been going on? Was it someone from her office or someone she'd met elsewhere? The morning after pill was equally disturbing. It meant she was being intimate with someone else without protection, taking risks that could affect both of our health. It meant she was making conscious decisions to betray our marriage vows while pretending everything was normal at home. Around 11, she said she was tired and went to bed. She kissed me on the forehead before leaving the living room, a gesture that now felt hollow and false. I listened to her moving around in our bedroom, going through her usual nighttime routine, and wondered how she could act so normal when she was living such a massive lie. That night, as she slept, I went back to her bag. I needed to confirm what I'd seen. When I examined the morning after pill more closely, I could see that one had been taken from the packaging that night. That confirmed my fears. My wife was cheating. The package had originally contained 2 pills, but one was missing. The empty space in the blister pack told a story I didn't want to hear. This was a recent, active betrayal happening right under my nose. I sat there in the darkness of our bedroom, holding the evidence of my wife's infidelity, and felt something fundamental break inside me. Not just my heart, though that was certainly shattered. Something deeper than that, my faith in the person I'd chosen to spend my life with, my belief in the foundation of our relationship, my confidence in my own ability to read the people closest to me. The betrayal went beyond just the physical act of cheating. She'd been lying to my face for months, possibly longer. Every evening when she came home late with stories about work, she'd been looking me in the eye and deliberately deceiving me. Every time I'd worried about her working too hard or offered to bring her dinner at the office, she'd been silently laughing at my naivety. An idea came to me. If she were using that lubricant with another man, there was a way to know for certain. I took the lubricant bottle to my toolbox in the garage, emptied it completely, and refilled it with super glue. Then I went back and kept it in her bag exactly where I'd found it. The process of switching the contents felt surreal. I was methodical and careful, making sure the bottle looked exactly the same when I was finished. The super glue had a slightly different consistency than the original lubricant, but not enough to be noticeable without close examination. As I worked, part of my mind was screaming that this was wrong, that I should confront her directly or simply file for divorce based on what I'd already discovered. But another part of me, the part that felt betrayed and humiliated, wanted undeniable proof of what she was doing. I wanted her to be caught in a way that left no room for denial or explanation. Then I waited. The following days passed normally on the surface. My wife went to work, came home at reasonable times, and we maintained our usual routines. I watched her behavior carefully to see if she had caught on to what I had done. During this waiting period, I found myself analyzing every interaction we had. When she kissed me goodbye in the morning, I wondered if she was thinking about the other man. When she told me about her day at work, I tried to detect which parts were true and which were fabricated to cover her tracks. I also began paying attention to her phone habits. She received text messages at odd hours, often late in the evening or early in the morning. When these messages came in, she would check them immediately, but never volunteered information about who was contacting her or why. The psychological toll of waiting and watching was enormous. I felt like I was living a double life, pretending to be a normal husband while secretly investigating my wife's betrayal. Every conversation felt forced and artificial. Every shared meal was flavored with a bitter taste of deception. I began having trouble sleeping, lying awake at night, wondering how long this had been going on. Had she been cheating when we celebrated our last anniversary? when we went on vacation earlier in the year, when she told me she loved me just last week. The result of my action came the next Friday night, when my wife stayed out so late that I had to call her. Without hiding anymore, she said she was hospitalized. I didn't ask why over the phone. I just drove there. The phone call was brief and cryptic. Her voice sounded strained and different from usual. She gave me the name of the hospital and her room number, but did not explain why she was there. The tone of her voice suggested this wasn't a minor issue. She sounded shaken and possibly in pain. The drive felt strange. Part of me was concerned about her well-being, but another part knew this was likely connected to what I'd done. I parked at the hospital and made my way to the emergency department. The hospital was busy that evening, with the usual collection of people dealing with various medical emergencies. I gave the receptionist my wife's name and explained that I was her husband. After checking my identification, she told me that my wife is in a room in the emergency ward. Walking through the hospital corridors, I felt a mixture of anxiety and grim satisfaction. If my suspicions were correct, and this was related to the super glue substitution, then I would finally have undeniable proof of her infidelity. But I also realized that I might have caused serious harm to another person, regardless of their betrayal. After speaking with the staff, I was directed to her room. When I saw her lying there with medical equipment around her and in full line, I was sure that what I was seeing and what I suspected were the same. I looked her in the eyes and called her a cheat. The sight of her in that hospital bed was jarring. She looked pale and uncomfortable, surrounded by medical equipment that suggested she was receiving treatment for something serious. When our eyes met, I saw immediate recognition and guilt in her expression. She knew exactly why I was there and what had led to her current situation. There was no confusion or surprise, just the look of someone who had been caught and knew the game was over. She knew that I knew. I don't know how, but somehow she'd figured out I was responsible for her being there. I didn't wait for explanations or justifications. I simply left the hospital and drove home. The confrontation had lasted less than 2 minutes, but I knew it was the end of everything we'd built together. The drive home was a blur of emotions. Relief that the truth was finally out in the open, without any guilt about the potential severity of what I'd done. The whole situation felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life implode rather than experiencing my own. As I drove home, I realized the implication of using superglue instead of lubricant was more serious than I had thought. What I'd done could cause severe medical complications, and the fact that she was hospitalized meant it had caused real harm. The medical implications were significant. Superglue bonds rapidly with moisture and can cause chemical burns, tissue damage, and require emergency medical intervention to separate bonded surfaces. The emergency room staff would have had to work quickly to minimize damage and prevent permanent injury. I understood that my actions, while revealing the truth about her infidelity, didn't justify potentially causing her permanent injury. I knew the marriage was over. There was no recovery from this situation. She'd been unfaithful, and I'd responded in a way that she never saw coming. When I arrived home, I couldn't find the right word to describe how I was feeling. The life we'd built together was ending, and I could feel the weight of that reality settling over everything. Photos of happier times together now looked like evidence of a naive past, reminders of how wrong I'd been about the person I'd married. The divorce was messy, as expected. We communicated only through lawyers once she was released from the hospital. The legal proceedings began within weeks of the hospital incident. Her attorney immediately filed papers citing assault. The legal process was complicated by the unusual nature of what had occurred. Her lawyer argued that I had deliberately caused her physical harm. My lawyer countered with evidence of her adultery and argued that my actions were done as a prank, but I never knew my wife was cheating on me. Since we both worked and earned well, our assets were divided fairly. We didn't have children, which simplified the legal process significantly. Child custody battles often make divorces much more contentious and expensive, but we were spared that additional complication. The house was sold, and the proceeds were split equally. Our retirement accounts, investments, and other assets were also divided down the middle according to standard divorce procedures. We had accumulated a reasonable amount of wealth during our marriage, including savings, investment accounts, and equity in our home. The entire legal process took several months to complete. During this time, we maintained separate living arrangements and had no direct contact. All communication went through our respective attorneys. The process was expensive, emotionally draining, and time-consuming, but it was the only way to legally dissolve what had become an untenable situation. That's how I went from being married to being unmarried without warning. A broken phone charger led to a discovery that ended years of marriage in a matter of weeks. The trust that took years to build was destroyed in an instant, and there was no way to repair it. The irony wasn't lost on me that such a small, random event had led to such massive consequences. If that charger had continued working, I might never have searched her bag that night. I might have remained oblivious to her cheating for months or years longer. The entire trajectory of my life changed because of a $15 piece of electronics, giving up when it did. Looking back, I realized there might have been better ways to handle the situation. I could have confronted her directly about what I'd found. I could have gathered more evidence and simply filed for divorce. I could have suggested marriage counseling to try to understand what had led her to seek intimacy elsewhere. Instead, I chose a method that revealed the truth but also caused harm. The experience taught me several hard lessons about human nature and relationships. Betrayal brings out the worst in people, including myself. It showed that someone could make terrible decisions when hurt and angry. I also learned that revenge, even when it feels justified, might create more problems than it solves. I'm rebuilding my life now, learning to trust again while being more cautious. The whole experience changed my perspective on relationships fundamentally. I'm more aware of warning signs, more willing to ask difficult questions, and less inclined to ignore red flags in favor of maintaining peace. The process of rebuilding has been challenging, but also enlightening. I've had to examine my own character and acknowledge the capacity for poor judgment that led me to make such a dangerous decision. I've also had to work on trusting my instincts while not becoming so suspicious that I can't form meaningful relationships. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my charger hadn't broken that evening. Would I have ever discovered the truth about her infidelity? Would we still be married, with me unaware of what was really happening? Would she have eventually ended the affair and returned to being fully committed to our marriage? These questions will never have answers, but I've come to believe that the truth, however painful it was to uncover, was better than living a lie. Even if the way I uncovered that truth was wrong, I'm ultimately glad that I learned what kind of person I was really married to before wasting more years of my life. The damage from deception goes beyond just the immediate relationship. It affects your ability to trust others in the future, and that's something worth considering, whether you're the one being deceived or the one doing the deceiving. Trust is fragile and precious, and once broken, it's extremely difficult to repair. My marriage ended, but life continues. I'm working on building something better from what remains, armed with hard-earned wisdom about relationships, trust, and the consequences of our choices when we're at our lowest points. The experience was painful and costly, but it also taught me valuable lessons about myself and human nature that I carry forward into whatever comes next.